Good day, everyone. Welcome to Speak Your Mind. Your mental health depends on it. I am Cecilia Salazar, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi everyone, I'm Dean BISSOONDIAL. Really delighted to be with you wherever you're joining us from today. And of course, I'm thrilled to be in the company of these esteemed, two accomplished, awesome ladies.
Well, thank you, Dean. I'm Vaughnette Bigford, everyone, and welcome to all of you who are looking at us on the television and those of you who are joining us live. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you participate and give us your feedback on today's program.
Right. In case you're wondering, Speak Your Mind was created so we can have a weekly discussion on mental health issues, to start breaking the stigmas associated with it, and to find solutions to deal with our mental health.
Yeah. And this show is produced by our good friend Stephen Dubal of OMG Media in partnership with Lucy Gabriel of Lifeline. For over 44 years, Lifeline has been befriending the despairing and suicidal in Trinidad and Tobago since June 1978 people.
Yeah, that must have taken a lot of commitment and dedication from Lucy. And she's still very passionate about it, just as passionate as she was when she started it. The purpose of Lifeline basically to have listeners available 24 hours a day to offer emotional support for persons who are passing through a crisis and are in imminent danger of taking their lives.
Wow. Lifeline's work is done quietly because the aim is to help save a soul, but they won't tell a soul. So while we are all asleep, they are talking with individuals who at most times they're emotional lowest.
Lifeline is also in critical need of funding to not only maintain its services but expand its support further. So please go to TT Lifeline on Facebook where you can donate to this invaluable service. Your support will continue this critical work.
Yes, wow, 44 years, y'all. Wow. That is pure devotion. Congratulations, Lucy.
Yeah.
Well done. We are in awe of you. In awe.
Thankful
So-
for the commitment too.
Yes. So in today's show, we are looking at loss. How do we deal with all this loss we are now facing? Because of this worldwide pandemic, loss of all kinds is surrounding us. It has taken many of us into deep soul searching realities to just find ways to cope.
Yes. And loss has become so much part of our daily lives. But how is it really affecting us as a society? As of today, there are over 3,400 families in Trinidad and Tobago who have lost loved ones due to the COVID-19 pandemic alone. How are all these families and friends coping?
3,400 families, you said, Dean.
Yes.
Wow.
3,400. A lot of grieving people because each of these persons had their immediate family, their extended family, their associates, their colleagues, their friends. A lot of grieving people. And these people are going to be grieving for quite a long while too.
Yeah, a lot of grief. Also, there are many others dealing with different types of loss right now. Like loss of their job, their business investment, their livelihood. Like our artists and entertainers not being able to make a living for over 2 years now. How are all of these people in this industry alone dealing with their losses? How many can pivot to survive? And what is that survival mode doing to them mentally?
I hate that word pivot earlier.
Really here?
Creative. Yeah, I just think we've been hearing it so much.
Yes.
But at this time in our history, in this pandemic, loss seems to be everywhere, almost everywhere, all corners of the earth. How is this really affecting us as individuals in this country? So today on Speak Your Mind, we want to find out, how do we deal with all this loss?
Is there a way? Because I know we can all do with a little help. How can we recover and not get overwhelmed and consumed by that feeling of hopelessness?
Indeed, Cecilia. To help us navigate through our discussion today and how to deal with all this loss is forensic psychologist SWAYNE-LEO HOSEIN-CADOGAN, who is in Trinidad.
Yes, it's so exciting to meet up with Leo
Yeah.
again.
Yes.
And we also have OSANNE OSANNE Williams, who is a licensed professional counselor, and she's joining us live from Virginia, USA.
Ooh. And also from our sister island Tobago is journalist and communications specialist, our friend Miss JOANNAH BAROSE. Let's connect with them now and start the conversation.
Oh, welcome. We are there. Are they coming into the room? Welcome, Leo, OSANNE, and JOANNAH. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
And it's lovely to be here as usual with fine company.
Welcome to those who have joined us live online as well. Please share your thoughts. We have some wonderful panelists. Share your thoughts, your comments, and your questions, and they'll address them as they come in.
All right, so OSANNE, JOANNAH, and Leo, we are truly grateful that you have taken time to chat with us today and help us navigate this very deep, reaching issue which we all face at some point in our lives, that feeling of loss.
So first, I want us to explore what types of loss people are dealing with today. Yeah, Leo, what types of loss? I mean, mainly death, I think, is the main loss right now during this pandemic.
Yeah. Now, when we say loss really is just like the breaking of the bonds that we've formed with significant people, places, things, or ideas.
Oh, okay, I
And
like that
so
definition.
We kind of use the terms of loss and grief simultaneously. Grief is that feeling of sadness and pain that comes when we perceive a loss. And as you say, with the pandemic and everything, there's a myriad of that feeling that is going around. So people are experiencing the loss of other people and relationships. They're experiencing financial loss, physical loss when you get ill and your body just isn't functioning the way you want it to. There's a loss of ideas and values. The way of life that we once enjoyed is no more. So we've lost that as well. I mean, you can't even walk out the front door without a mask.
Yeah.
I remember when I was young, everybody wanted to run around and play ninja. Couldn't do that out in public. You get licks. Now you get licks if you go out in public and you're not ninja'd out.
True,
Yeah.
And then we also have, there's a sense of anticipatory loss. So that's when we know it's coming. When someone dies and it's sudden, it catches us all for six, as they say. But even when you know it's coming, so a family member has contracted COVID or has some other terminal illness, and you know this is inevitable, it doesn't really make it any easier. The loss is still hard. And then we have ongoing loss. So in addition to having lost our way of life, in addition to having lost our ideas and values of life as we once knew it, we have the fact that we still don't know when the pandemic is going to end. We still have that hanging cloud of continued job loss and continued furlongs. So there's that sense that there's just loss upon loss upon loss, and it's constantly ongoing. But, I don't want to seem all doom and gloom, because my tutor, who has taught me so well, would not let me get away with it. Loss isn't all negative. There is such a thing as positive loss. So for those of you among us who are happily married, that in and of itself would have been a loss. The loss of your singlehood, your single life, the person you were when you were untethered.
Yeah.
You've moved out of the family home, you've moved away from mom and dad and siblings into a new life, new neighborhood. That is a different type of loss. And for those of us who have started new jobs, the new job is a different kind of loss. You've lost the old job family, but you're moving on to better things. So loss isn't always doom, gloom, sadness, and tears.
Okay.
I want to take a little beef for that.
Sure.
I don't know that you can have positive loss. I think you can move on, you can morph, you can become something else, you can get to another phase and a stage. I don't know if you can call that a loss, because that in those positive circumstances you just highlighted, those things seem like a gain. So I don't know that.
Yes.
I know you want to please your tutor, But let's call it straight up. Loss is loss.
Loss. All right.
So
Let's
me
hear
being
from
his
it.
tutor, that's why he said that.
That's why.
Me being his tutor, loss is not. So when we talk about loss, we always tend to think of it negatively, but in the definition of what it is the breaking of a bond.
Right.
With a thing, an idea, a person, so a belief, a place. So it is possible for it to be a loss, even as a result of positive change.
Yeah.
So think, for example, and I like to use this example often because, of course, I'm an expat, so I left home.
Right.
And that was a loss, even though the change was for positive, but it's still a loss.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Every
Yes.
day. And so positive change can result in loss
Right.
and the grief that goes along with loss.
Yeah.
Loss isn't always negative, but it can produce negative feelings. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I hear that.
And so when he's saying that there's positive loss, the loss itself is the action of that breaking of that bond, that breaking of whatever it is, that belief that has been formed with that thing. And so when you
Makes
look at
sense.
that, even though there are some positive changes, even when we're talking about, the pandemic and things like that, there are some things that are really good that came out of it,
Really good.
like online banking. Finally, everybody
Online
gets to
everything.
online bank. Everyone gets to online everything. And while it is more efficient, there is also that feeling of, well, that missing of human contact.
Contact, yeah.
Yes, I can get everything done fast, but also sometimes you just want your questions answered by a human, just for that human connection.
And I will rest it right there. But what
Right.
is the opposite of a loss?
Yeah.
Is it not a gain? So I can understand the stages that come with loss in terms of breaking of the bond. I like that, but I still believe that a loss. I don't know that you can say
Well,
positive
yeah,
things can come out of a loss.
because we have different
I guess
types of loss.
I
Exactly.
guess it's just based. I guess it's just based on what the definition of loss is,
Yeah.
and in the context of what they do.
Yeah.
And that's just basically
Dean?
the idea.
And I think too, for the layman, there is some sort of negative connotation with
The word
loss.
loss.
This is
Yeah.
how we're conditioned as humans.
Yeah.
I
But,
once had to.
Dean?
Go ahead, Dean. Sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead, Leo. Sorry.
I once had to explain the same concept to a young cousin of mine, and I used the Sesame Street example with Ernie and the saxophone. The concept: put down the ducky if you want to play the saxophone. You love the duck, but you can't play the saxophone with one hand. So putting down the duck is in essence that loss. You're giving up something, but you're also gaining something. It's just a matter of you can't have it both, essentially,
Gotcha.
if that makes sense.
But Leo, you touched on something earlier about loss and grieving. Is grieving the main way in which we deal with loss? I mean, how about things like anger and frustration, or maybe even revenge?
Yes and no. In that, so when we speak about grieving is actually
Yes.
the process by which we are acknowledging loss. We experience the grief of loss, that sadness that comes with the losing of the bond. Grieving in and of itself encompasses so many emotions.
Yeah, as
So
I,
that anger, that resentment, that want for revenge, that's just the tip of the iceberg of all that we're going to experience when we are grieving.
yeah, because I looked up, and as I was saying, there are 5 stages of grief that I found.
Right?
That, I mean, I think most of us have heard about this: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. Are these the standard Let me hear from OSANNE.
Please.
So
OSANNE. Sorry, I gave you an A at the end of your
you
name.
are good. You are good. So those 5 stages are the ones that we hear about the
Yeah.
most. That is Kubler-Ross's 5 stages,
Right.
and it became famous a couple years ago, and that's what everyone looked to as a standard.
Yeah.
However, when I am talking with people who are going through grief, and also when I'm going through my own grief, I have to remind myself grief is not a linear process. You don't walk through like, okay, today I'm in denial.
No.
Okay, today I'm in anger. All right, now we bargain. Now I'm depressed and now I accept. Grief is actually circular. You can sometimes some people experience one thing and they never experience any of the others,
Right.
or they may come back to something that they thought that they had worked through. Um, and so while those may help, those stages as well as some of the other types of grief and mourning theories that are out there may help us put an idea to it, it's more important to know there's no one way to grieve.
That
There's no
makes
one
sense.
right way for anyone to grieve. It looks different for everybody. Even in the same family, you could experience the
Yeah.
same loss, the same death, the same situation, and everyone reacts differently. And that's okay. Um, but there are some things that a lot of people may tend to experience, and that's generally the sadness. Sometimes there is a feeling of numbness. A lot of people may also have loss of appetite, because we talk about the feelings and then forget grief can also be experienced in your body,
Yeah.
Right.
right? So headaches, stomach aches,
Wow.
loss of appetite, difficulty sleeping. Um, Sometimes, there are changes to how you behave. Um, you may, feel a lot of energy, excessive energy, like you can't stay still, so needing to stay
Restlessness.
busy or shutting down. All right. So there are a lot of different ways that grief can present, not just with those stages. And it's really important to pay attention to if you're behaving differently after a loss, you're probably working through grief and just not realizing that that's
That
what's
is what it
going on.
Sure.
And that is
Thank you.
particularly true for men.
Yeah.
Oh.
Somehow it seems that levels of frustration and discontent have kind of taken over the sensibility of the world, and everybody seems to be on edge these days. Everyone seems to be on edge, including me, including me. But what can you say about that? What's driving that?
So, you want to do
Yeah.
that, Leo? You go ahead.
Grief is exactly what is driving that, because as I've touched on before, our way of life that we were used to for so many decades has now been flipped on its head. We don't have the freedoms we once had. We don't have the outlets for self-enjoyment and self-care that we once had. And now you're in a situation where you feel like everybody is telling you what to do, what you can do, what you cannot do. And then we are losing loved ones to a disease that we can't seem to stop. And then even how we would normally go through the grief process, having the funeral, having the wake, having family members come by and have that large grouping.
That's so true.
That we
gone.
can't do that.
That is so true, because just last night we were talking about the best funerals we've been to.
Right?
I know that might sound strange, but there's some of
No.
them that turn up into you see everybody, and I
Right.
couldn't wait to go back the next night. So the
And
9 nights, and we don't have
yeah,
that anymore.
yeah. And so even you reminiscing about the funerals you used to attend, that's an example of coping with the grief of not being able to have those kind of funerals anymore. You're reliving the memories and the good
Yes,
times of a
of the
funeral.
good funerals. Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
and you have on top of that now, there is some semblance of normalcy. So we're still expected to go to work. We're still expected to be adults and be responsible. But there are so many changes in how we have to do it that it has us on edge. And we're not even recognizing that this is grief that we're feeling. We just know we don't feel right.
Yeah.
And anger is a go-to response for frustration. When you don't know what you're feeling, be angry.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. We're talking in terms of the depth of loss, in terms of human life, yeah. But there's something I kind of wanna, if I can drop into the conversation.
Of course.
You have people who have lost jobs, home, relationships, a car, whatever they've lost,
Yeah.
and the grief is in some cases no less than losing someone, especially persons who have lost their homes or people who have lost a job and now simply can't find the replacement
Work.
in terms of employment. And that for me, because that is a kind of a continuous battle on a daily basis that a lot of people are dealing with. There's almost sometimes with the pain and suffering that you feel from the loss of someone, there's almost a finality in terms of when you've lost that person. And then there's a process that a lot of people would go through, as some of it has been indicated. But I don't want us to lose sight of those people who have lost
Like,
in terms of living and way of life, which
Yeah.
has really, they
We
have to
know
live
it
with
well.
that. They have to wake up with it. There's a depression and there's a continued, if people are not able to access therapy or even any kind of treatment, because we also have that big stigma about seeking any kind of therapy in terms of helping to cope, and that keeps a lot of people shut away and very dysfunctional in terms of how they're dealing with the grief of that.
Yeah. And then when you've lost your job, your home, your everything, you can't afford the therapy. How am I going to any therapy? OMG is my therapy. Thank God for OMG. Jeez. God.
And
Yes.
And that is a big part as well. We're talking about grief, and of course, we're talking about loss of life, but that ongoing loss. You're constantly living with, my home is at risk, my job, I'm hunting for jobs, and I'm unemployed, and I still have to take care of myself, and I still have to take care of my family. That's an ongoing loss, and it keeps people trapped in the grieving process,
Yeah.
because you're not getting a sense of relief. And we were talking a little bit ago about that feeling of just being on edge and anger, and it's really connected to feeling powerless. I don't know about anybody else, but in the past 2.5 years, I have felt extremely powerless.
Powerless.
There is nothing that I could
yeah,
do to really change things outside of
any,
myself.
Yeah.
And it leaves that sense of being really powerless. Just,
Yeah.
you're just kind of like, okay, and then as you put other losses on top of that, as you put struggling every day just to survive and make things happen, um, it just increases that
Yeah.
sense of being agitated and being edgy and really trying to figure, and everyone's trying to say figure it out, deal with it, but then it's a matter of how.
Yeah. Exactly. Because it loss seems to trigger many other situations to unfold. So, it's suicide linked to loss. We are seeing a rise in suicide as well because people are grieving.
yeah, yeah. Depression is one of the side effects of loss. It is going to affect that sadness, and sadness and depression is not the same. Please understand, you can feel sad without being depressed, but that depression, when that sadness continues, when that hopelessness continues, and that desire to live leaves you, that is even more debilitating. And it's sad to say, for many individuals, that seems like the only option they have left. And as Ozanne mentioned, that sense of helplessness. Well, I have control of this. I decide when and how I check out. And we may think it's a very selfish thing, but it's just one more means of holding on to some semblance of control in a world where everything seems to be out of your control right now.
Leo or San, as you touched on the point, and I would like to know. I mean, I read a lot on it. For viewers, is there any way you can you can help quickly distinguish. I know it's hard because you need to engage with people to find out the difference between the sadness and depression. Just literally a few seconds.
So, to quickly determine, not necessarily quickly, but like Leo was saying, it's more about the intensity. Somebody who is experiencing depression doesn't experience a lift or a release in that sadness. Even if that sadness is coming as numbness, they don't go some moments where they are, oh yeah, I'm fine, I can operate,
Yeah.
I'm okay. It's always there like a background hum, constantly running as a background hum for them. And it goes on for weeks, months, sometimes even longer. Whereas someone who's going through grief and that sadness, they will have the waves of sadness that will come and then it will go and they'll be okay and they'll function and it's not there. And then they may think of the loss and then it may come back or they may feel something different. But someone who's experiencing depression, they really just experience that low mood or feelings of
Right.
hopelessness. It's just there,
Constant.
constant. And even if they have a little elevation in mood, because they can still, people with depression can enjoy things, they can have a full life, but it's that they never really go over that level. They kind of stay, even with that, they have that
Right.
background hum.
And well, talking about viewers, welcome to all of those joining us online. We do appreciate you having you here with us today. Let's see some of your thoughts and comments, shall we? So Pamela Singh says hi. Hello to
I
Priya Gomes, Mora. Pamela again says beautiful topic. Um, a blessed day, evening to all wonderful people. Thank you for this. That's from Rosalind Jackson. Um,
Hey, Ross.
sorry. I recently learned that a loss through painful and considered negative can have a positive outcome. It just depends on your perspective. That's a very good point. Um, Margarita Elliott, that's great. You guys are doing this. Maria Bola says, "This is informative. Thanks for this." And those are just some of the comments that we have from our online participants so far.
thank you so much.
Well, guys, the conversation has been very enlightening so far. Thanks, and thanks for the comments that are coming in. Keep them coming.
Thank you.
Let's move on a bit to find out some of the ways in which we can deal with this loss.
Great. So, Ozanne, can you tell us how do we deal with this lost girl? How do we give people the tools to find the light at the end of the tunnel?
So, there are so many different ways that we can deal, but one of the things that I tell my clients all the time, it feels like on a daily basis, is the best way to deal with feelings is to feel it.
Feel the feelings.
Feel the feelings, let
Yes,
it
yes.
go. Crazy concept, but it works. Often we run from emotions. We run from it out of fear that it will take us over and then we won't be able to handle it or we won't be able to function, or just thinking that the feelings will be too big. But the reality is when we feel it, it actually reduces the power that the feelings have over us, and we're actually able to move forward. So the first thing is feeling it. Now, how you choose to do it looks different to everybody. There are some ways to work through feelings, getting creative. So getting involved with, journaling, writing about things, with music, painting. You don't have to be an artist
Right.
to paint through your feelings or to draw through your feelings, or to use art, but it helps. It gives you a way of expressing yourself. Talking about your loss, as caveat, I know a lot of people are not very tolerant of hearing about other people's loss. A lot of people can't handle it. They think that they won't be able to help, or they will then become emotionally overwhelmed. And so then they shut it down. But really talking about your loss helps. Having people that you can just be open with
Yeah.
and just say, this is not a complaint, but this is how I'm feeling. I am sad, or I am really angry, or I am worried, you know, and being able to talk about that, it helps. And so not being afraid to talk about it because you think people won't be able to handle it. Then at the same time, being a safe person for people around you to talk about their loss. Because it helps. It helps reduce that. Carrying the load is easier when there are people who can help you carry it.
It's,
So
that's so true. That's so good. Good advice. Thank you so much.
Guys, I have something to share. I recently, just a couple of months ago, I lost my mother, and it's still something that I struggle to deal with. And Ozan, I can relate to everything that you're saying. I mean, somebody mentioned about the physiological loss, like loss of appetite and not being able to sleep. And I can also tell you that that's that emotional support, and for people who have to provide that sort of support to people, others who are going through grief. Sometimes I think, yes, you might feel that you don't know how to handle the grief. It might overwhelm you, as you said. But for me, as somebody who just recently experienced it, just having someone there, knowing that someone is there, it doesn't have to be an extended conversation. It doesn't have to be, saying the right words. Just knowing that someone is there if you need to talk, somebody there, a shoulder to cry on. That has been monumental. But I had no clue about the type of loss that and the type of pain and grief that I would have gone through. You hear about it all the time. You hear friends talk about it, about losing a loved one, but until you have gone through that and experienced it yourself, it really, there's no way to prepare you. No way.
Deepest condolences,
Yes.
Dean. But I also wanted to ask something, and for me, this is learning as much as
Yes, it is.
me not sharing anything of great significance. But is avoidance and desensitization a big challenge in coping with loss? Because sometimes, as Dean said, and I myself have not reached out to people who may have passed on because I feel like I don't know how to deal with it. But then I think I also engage in avoidance, which is really terrible, because it means you're taking it from your perspective and you're being a little bit desensitive to or insensitive, sorry, to the person who is really having to deal with the loss. I wanted to ask for either one of our experts here, how does that factor in the avoidance issue and the desensitization?
So yes, as human beings, we do this weird thing. We are not comfortable with each other's grief. Right? So we ask, "Are you okay?" But we don't really want the long-winded explanation of it, because, and a lot of times, as you say, that avoidance, your grief triggers my memory of my own loss, and it becomes, I don't feel like I can support you in your grief because now I'm reliving my own.
Right.
That fear of saying the wrong thing or offending or making matters worse is a real thing that we all have to face. And I remember it was hard for me to overcome. And I had to learn it the hard way, again, thanks to my tutor. And then when we do decide to interact, we give platitudes. I know how you feel,
Yeah.
time will heal all wounds, right?
He's in a better place. He's in a better place.
Better
Right.
place. Tears are the something of the soul, or
Yes,
whatever.
The thing is, though, none of that is actually said for the other person's benefit. We're saying that to make ourselves feel less uncomfortable, right? And sometimes depending on the degree of the loss, those platitudes can actually trigger anger because you're telling me you understand, but then when I try to tell you how I feel, you shut me down. So what's really going on? Some simple things to say. I don't know what to say. I don't know how you feel, but I love you and I'm here for you.
Oh, yeah.
So even as Dean mentioned, with a lot of the physiological responses, people don't take time for self-care. They don't eat properly. They don't sleep properly because they've got all these other things going on that they need to deal with. So lend a hand.
Yeah.
I'll bring you a meal. I'll help you cook.
Yeah.
I'll help you clean. I'll help you with the funeral arrangements. Tell me what else you need and I can do that. And that's a way of being there for people. And that's a way of helping that actually is benefiting everyone involved. And
Yeah.
just being there. Just give them a hug if they're okay
Yeah.
with touch.
Yeah.
I want
Everybody is.
to ask a question. You
Yeah.
referenced your loss just now. So I'm assuming that something had happened. But what I want to know, I mean, someone in your profession, is it that when you experience any type of loss, all this advice that you're able to give us that's so well laid out, I mean, and it sounds so fabulous coming from the mouths of the professionals. Are you able to apply that to your situation of loss? I mean, it'll be great because it means that you're now able to apply what you're teaching to yourself. But does that happen really, or is it that you go stir crazy and forget all what your teacher teach you?
The answer is C, all of the above. I am a human being, and yes, in the moment, in my loss, in my feelings, I don't want to be civilized. I don't want to go through the proper steps and the proper motions. I want to feel what I am feeling,
Right.
as raw and as uncomfortable as it is, and I have to go through that. I do have the benefit where it takes a little less time. Me 20 years ago, experiencing a loss, I am a mess for maybe a year, 2 years before I can pull myself together. Me now experiencing a loss, okay, I am going to give myself the time to feel what I feel. I will rant, I will rave, I will cuss, I will scream. And the religious among us may be offended by this statement, but many times when you think God is in control, God has a plan, the response is, really? God's plan is for me to experience this right now. This is what I have to go through.
It's
Yeah.
real, it's real, it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's real.
a lot of us are very uncomfortable with the prospect of how dare you be angry at God? But the fact remains, who am I to think that my anger can do anything to God? that is
Yeah.
very presumptuous of me.
What do we say to people who have lost their job, their homes, their business? Because it's not the same kind of grief you're dealing with death.
Someone, yeah, I mean, at that, it's still about being supportive.
Yeah.
Our instinct is to fix it. Give them all the suggestions. But did you try here? Did you try
Yeah.
there? I
Yeah.
hear this place hiring. I hear
Yeah.
there's a time and place for that. At the end of the day, it's more about being supportive. Just listen. Rearrange the letters of listen. We get silent. Just listen. Be okay with not having anything to say. Be okay with saying, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how to fix this. But I'll support you, and I will keep my ears open for any resources. But it's more important to be supportive for someone than to fix things, because at the end of the day, we can't fix anything. Even if you gave them um, another job that may be perfectly suited to them, maybe even better, there's still the feelings that go along with that loss anyway, especially depending on how it happens. And so it's more important for us to be okay with supporting people
Yeah.
through their pain, than simply finding a way to fix it.
On the other side of that fence, what then would be your suggestion of how someone who has gone through that same loss of, as I say, job, business, home, whatever, and maybe relationships as a result of that? I mean, what's the advice that you give to them? How do they start, the coping process?
Whew.
Are you eating?
Patience.
Are you sleeping? Are you showering? Are you getting up out of bed? The process is taking care of yourself however possible that you can do it. Feel your feelings, but take care of yourself. The minute you stop any of that, you start sliding into hopelessness. And that's not where you want to go, because that's a really, really slippery slope. It's hard. That loss is big and it's real. Death is not the only loss that counts. All right. But don't neglect yourself even when things are hard, because it's really hard to get back to yourself once you do. It's really hard to get back hope and to see a light when you slide down the tunnel into the darkness that is hopelessness. You can be helpless, meaning you're not able to change something that may have happened, but it doesn't mean giving into hopeless, which means that there is no point in living anymore.
So true, so true.
I think that the loss of so much of our freedoms because of this pandemic, it's been so debilitating. And we've lost so much of who we are as humans. I mean, something as simple as the loss, this loss that I tell people that seeing people smile is such an important thing to me.
Yeah.
And you're lost.
You can't.
So you can't see people smile. Something as simple as that may seem so small in the whole scheme of things, but we have just lost so much, and this pandemic has really been taking an emotional toll on all of us. It really has been taken on people. I think people are just in forward movement, but a lot of us are really, really, really dealing with a lot of different emotions around this pandemic.
Yeah, because a lot of the times there are people we may not even know, and we start to grieve and we feel sad when we see it in the newspapers and when we hear the amount of deaths every day. So I feel a loss even if it's not directly related to me.
Yes,
Does it make sense?
It does. It does.
That makes a lot of sense, and simply because the loss of people is one of the most impactful losses we'll experience. Doesn't even matter if you don't know them, and Kobe Bryant is a good example of that. People never met Kobe, crying on the side of the road because Kobe and his daughter died, because he's a known figure. We have that connection as a species that we feel for each other. So your loss is my loss because it's the loss of a human being, and I will feel that, and I can connect with that because I've lost somebody. And in a sense, it's almost as if you have that bonding point over.
Yeah.
I've lost, you've lost, we've lost.
Yeah, we can grieve together sometimes. So Dean,
I'm sorry. Sorry to cut across. So
That's
something
okay.
that OSANNE was saying that I thought was really interesting. So we talked a lot about what we say to people in terms of are you okay?
Yeah.
I'm here. I love you. But I don't. I wanted to kind of if we could touch on, and I think this is important, that what we do for people in terms of actionable thing beyond words. So like for instance, a friend of mine. She lost a job. A lot of friends have lost jobs. So, you bake something, you go across to the house, you say, if you need some cash, let me know how I can help. Sometimes I might be able to, sometimes you're not. Do you want me to take you somewhere? Can I pick you up and take you somewhere? So things like that, I think is really important in terms of demonstrating physical action when people are going through the issue of, as I say, loss of business, home, jobs, because that, for me, seems to be something that's kind of pulling us apart as a society more than the loss of a loved one in terms of people's loss of their livelihood. And it's a continuing struggle. So it would have been nice to hear from either one of our experts what are some of the other kinds of things that we can do physically for people when we can, because not everybody can afford to help public financially, but baking something and taking it across to their house, or saying, "Can I pick you up? Can we do the movies, or we just go to the beach? It doesn't cost anything."
Joanna, you can pick me up and take me to the beach anytime. Just
Well, I have
let me
told you,
know.
come to Tobago anytime, more
I'll
than
be there soon. I'm
I'll take you
coming.
the entire ocean.
Yeah, definitely. Being able to just the power of presence, be there, help. One of the most helpful things I know, food matters. Making sure someone eats, especially because people who are, and I am very food motivated, y'all.
Food
I'm sorry, but food matters. I feed
Yeah.
people, and I like to be fed. That's how I show care, But it communicates a lot of care when
Yes.
you think about, have you eaten today?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even going to ask. I'm going to show up and make sure that you eat.
Yeah.
I don't need to know whether or not you can afford this or not. That's not the point. I'm going to bring you something, and it doesn't have to be anything big. It's finding ways to show care, spending time, um, physical touch, a hug if they are comfortable with it. These things matter. Being present. So not just, I'm here, let's talk about all the sad things. There's that place for that. But also, I'm here, let's do something that you enjoyed.
Let's live.
Especially,
Let's live.
let's live. Yeah,
Lovely.
let's go for
Let's live.
a walk where we are allowed to go for a walk.
Let's live. I
You
love
know,
that. Love that. Let's live.
life
So,
If
Dean,
all else
life
fails,
continues. Dean, do we have any questions and comments from our audience
Yes.
now?
So Maria Bola says, I feel to scream sometimes. I feel trapped. Maria, I could relate to that sometimes, for real. Natasha Pigot Gray says, you have to deal with the change. You just have to deal with it sometimes. And she also says, I lost my daughter through suicide.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Jasmine Mohan says, depression felt as if it was an implosion. Sadness manifests externally, but depression is internal. So others can see sadness, but not necessarily depression. Yes.
that's true.
Wow.
And Pamela Singh says again, I believe that just feel it and move forward. My deepest condolences. I lost my dad in 2001. I don't grieve for him no more, but I miss him a lot still. Is this normal?
Of course.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Natalia Gomes Fitz says, so true. Those words tend to get me angry.
All right. The words like I know how you're feeling and stuff like that.
Platitudes,
The
yes.
platitudes.
Yeah.
Platitudes. I like that word.
She's in a better place. She's in a better
Yes.
Yes.
That was, yeah.
Daniela Boyce Khalees says, we tend to distance ourselves from God when we feel lost. It's not easy in the midst of emotions to believe that there's something bigger than us. That is how we get to the other side. All right. Ricardo Henry says, how do we support or help someone who has experienced loss?
Okay,
Yeah,
that was great. So let's explore some actions, which we've done some already in our next segment called Finding Help.
guys, I was wondering, like, I mean, in the past, throughout history, bad things was always happening. We always had stuff happening. However, I don't think our parents were consumed with it, like how we consumed with everything that's negative that's happening. What's the difference? Is it that we have become our parents, or are we so old now that all we could think about is all the negative and all the gloom and doom or whatnot? We could only focus on all the perils and not the light. What is the reason for that? Why?
TMI.
It is.
I'm gonna blame social media on this one because yes, in the past there have been terrible things, the Black Plague, Spanish influenza, cholera, all of it. But everybody didn't have a smartphone back then. People weren't constantly updating on Facebook and Twitter and sending pictures. I'm in the hospital on WhatsApp. Look at this crowd of people on WhatsApp.
Right.
And we have this thing now where the world feels like a much smaller place. We can reach out to somebody in China within 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And because of that, every little thing that goes wrong gets immediate coverage.
Yeah.
We use the term train wreck quite often, and it's true. We're driving down the highway, we see an accident, it's on the northbound lane, we are on the south. What do? We slow down and we watch, because we have this fascination when things go awry. And so, because we highlight the negative more than the positive, it tends to feel like there's more negative in the world. Bad news spreads faster than good news every time.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Dean?
Yes. So can you tell us some more about Green Cross and what Green Cross is set up to do?
All right.
Green Cross.
Yeah. So the Green Cross is an international non-profit humanitarian organization. We are tasked with doing two different things. That one is training volunteers to work with disasters and trauma, and the other is volunteering and doing that. And so the Green Cross Center for Trauma Studies in Trinidad and Tobago, the Trinidad and Tobago chapter, works to train people such as Leo and our other members. And then also we provide counseling, we provide deployments. So we go out when we're invited out into neighborhoods. So we've responded to to the floods, to landslide. We've responded to Dominica after the hurricanes. We do those types of things. And then we also do one-on-one therapy with individuals for short terms who are in a crisis situation and wanting therapy. And then we connect them to long-term care as needed. And so that's kind of what we do right now.
That's fantastic, and that's international. Oh, yeah. So we have Green Cross in Trinidad, or we just
we have a branch in Trinidad and Tobago.
Great,
yes,
fantastic.
We do. We've
fantastic.
We were established in Trinidad and Tobago in 2015 was our first trainings, and then we have been doing trainings there yearly. We actually have one coming up this weekend. For individuals, and we've been responding since then.
That is so great, because to Vaughnette's point, we can get so wrapped up in the negativity around us that it becomes impossible to see the light. But you are proving that there is a way. We can help, and we can help each other. That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
As you're talking about a way, maybe we should move to hope now. What is
yes, guys?
Where's the
Can
hope?
I ask if do we have any contact details for Green Cross to share with the public?
Of course.
Well,
so we can be contacted at Green Cross TT, GREEN Cross TT at gmail.com, or the phone number is 271-3546.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're also on Facebook as well.
Yes, we are on Facebook as well.
Easy.
So guys, going back to the topic of hope, where's the hope for people?
Well, I dare say hope is in these wonderful individuals that we have here today. Thank you so much. Hope is in Leo and OSANNE. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, and Joanna. And Green Cross. Yes, and we have to be there for each other. Any thoughts on hope? Any thoughts on hope?
Lifeline, yes.
Lifeline, of course.
As long as there's life, and it's not cliche, as long as there's life, there's hope. It takes as long as it takes. But at the end of the day, as long as we are alive, there is hope. There's a chance for change and a chance for things to improve. Doesn't mean it will, Doesn't mean it will immediately, but as long as we are alive, there is hope. And that is something we often lose sight of, especially when in the midst of the pain.
Yeah.
But there is an end to pain.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It goes away. It might come back, especially around anniversaries, memorials, but it's an ebb and flow. Some days it will feel worse than others, and some days you won't think about it at all. There is always hope. And, to that end, I would always encourage, if anybody out there is feeling particularly depressed, particularly sad, particularly hopeless, please reach out to professionals. Yes, utilize your social circles, speak to your various religious leaders, but do not hesitate to reach out to professionals. You can find a lot of information online. Find Care TT. It's a website that was a database, I should say, created by the Ministry of Health. So it gives a list of all the available mental health professionals, both private and public, all the NGOs like Lifeline, contact numbers, hotlines. There's always some means to reach out. And many of those hotlines also have a WhatsApp line. So if you say you don't have the money to call, you can send a WhatsApp if you're on Wi-Fi.
Oh,
There was always somebody on the
fantastic.
other end to respond.
Wow, what a wonderful Leo, OSANNE, and Joanna. We are so thankful for you.
Yes.
It really was our pleasure having you. Thank you for coming and sharing
Definitely.
and sharing your energies. It was extremely enlightening. And we want to thank you for your time and thoughts. Thank you very much
Yes.
for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to say one quick thing.
Of course.
If one of us could help one person, it's a big start. Just one person. We don't have to take on the whole world.
It's the best thought.
Good point. Good point.
Thank you. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. My heart, I'm far from home, but my heart is never far from home. And it's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. And once more to my tutor, thank you for your time.
She did good. She did good, Leo. She did good.
Good.
And I would like to thank those of you who joined us online and took part in today's show. Join us next week, same time and same place. I'm Dean Bissoondial. Have a great week, everyone.
Vaughnette Bigford guy. Enjoy your week. Stay safe. Stay safe.
And I'm Cecilia Salazar. Blessings. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we always say at OMG, let's be kind
Let's be
to
kind.
each other.
Let's be kind.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye, guys.
Careful.